For most people, creating a PC game begins with an idea. For me, it began with an old bridge. In 2005, my wife and I were building a house on the Broad River just a couple of miles north of downtown Columbia, South Carolina. While clearing the property, we discovered a stone bridge abutment hidden in the woods. At first, I wondered if we had stumbled upon the remains of the Confederate Broad River Bridge. The bridge burned in February 1865, just before the destruction of Columbia. The answer turned out to be even older. After months of research, we learned the bridge abutment belonged to Columbia's very first Broad River Bridge, built in the 1790s. Along the way, however, we also identified the actual location of the Confederate Bridge about a half-mile upstream. That discovery became an episode of the popular PBS television series, History Detectives, and it unexpectedly launched me into the world of local history. One discovery led to another. Soon I was helping lead archaeological investigations that rediscovered the lost colonial village of Granby and the site of Fort Congaree II. In 2017, I was honored to be named South Carolina Archaeologist of the Year. It was an unexpected recognition for someone whose entire career had been in engineering and technology. But in many ways, those two worlds had always been connected. Back in the early 1980s, while in my first year of college, I learned to program on a tiny pocket computer. After earning an associate degree in electronics from Midlands Technical College, I continued to the University of South Carolina to study computer and electrical engineering. During my spare time, I wrote computer games for the Commodore 64, which was a popular and affordable personal computer in the 1980s. Life eventually carried me into a 38-year engineering career, but that love of creating games never completely disappeared. When I retired in 2024, I finally had the opportunity to combine my lifelong passions of technology and history. The result was my first historical PC game, 12,000 Years in 1 Square Mile, which recreated thousands of years of history in Casey, South Carolina. The game was released on Steam in 2025, but while finishing that project, another idea had already begun taking shape. For years, I had been fascinated by one remarkable illustration, Camille Drie's magnificent 1872 bird's eye view of Columbia. It wasn't simply a beautiful drawing, it was almost a blueprint. None of this project would have been possible without the work of Camille Drie. What you see here is Drie's original bird's eye view on the left, and my 3D recreation of it on the right. As we descend into the 3D world, we arrive at the game's starting location. We're approaching the South Carolina State House grounds, where we'll touch down in front of the old State House. Born in France in 1843, Drie immigrated to the United States in 1864, where he enlisted in the 15th New York Engineers of the Union Army. After the Civil War, he became one of America's most accomplished cartographers and architectural illustrators, producing breathtaking bird's-eye views of cities across the country. Creating one of these illustrations was an extraordinary undertaking. Drie spent days walking the streets, carefully sketching individual buildings, businesses, and neighborhoods. He also climbed church steeples, hills, and other high vantage points to study the city from above. Back in his studio, he combined hundreds of individual sketches into a single, seamless, isometric view that appeared to float high above the city. Once the artwork was complete, Drie traveled to major lithography firms, such as the Chicago Lithographing Company, where his detailed drawings were transferred to lithographic stones and printed for publication. Although he left behind an extraordinary visual record of 19th century America, surprisingly little is known about the man himself. Very few personal papers or records have survived. As a tribute to the artist whose work made this game possible, I created a 3D model of Camille Drie based on a rare photograph taken around the same time he produced his 1872 bird's eye view of Columbia. The photograph of Drie allowed me to give him a small cameo appearance in the game, a fitting tribute to the man whose remarkable vision made so much of this project possible. Despite the illusion that the cities were drawn from a hot air balloon, Drie's method was strictly terrestrial. Using that single dry illustration as my starting point, I painstakingly reconstructed more than 170 city blocks of Columbia as they appeared during the Civil War. This wasn't simply game design. It became one of the largest historical reconstruction projects I have ever undertaken. Ironically, the greatest challenge wasn't programming, it was art. The 1872 drawing only shows the fronts of buildings visible from one direction. Entire sides and rear portions simply don't exist. This is where artificial intelligence became an invaluable tool. AI helped reconstruct architectural details that could never be seen in the original illustration. For example, the front facade of First Baptist Church had to be recreated from other historical sources before the complete building could be modeled. The old State House presented an even greater challenge. For years, I had been building an accurate 3D model using historical plans, documents, and surviving architectural evidence. Richardson Street, which is now called Main Street, required almost a complete rebuild. Although Drie's illustration shows the street as it appeared in 1872, my game takes place in October 1864. The 1865 Columbia Fire destroyed almost every building on that street. To recreate that earlier moment in time, I removed many of the buildings shown in the illustration and rebuilt the entire street using the businesses listed in the 1859 and 1860 Columbia City directories. Whenever period illustrations existed, I based the buildings directly on those sources. When they didn't, I searched for similar structures from the same era. And when no visual evidence survived at all, I relied on careful historical interpretation and some artistic liberty. I also wanted to recognize some of the other remarkable people whose work helped shape 19th century Columbia by also giving them cameo appearances in the game. One of them is Hiram Powers, widely regarded as one of the greatest American sculptors of the 19th century. Powers had close ties to Columbia through the Preston family, creating many portrait busts for them, as well as making the water fountain that once stood in a maze that was on the grounds of the Hampton Preston estate. Of course, he also sculpted the famous Roman marble statue of John C. Calhoun, the centerpiece of the game's story. The full-size statue, a smaller replica, and a bust of Calhoun all appear throughout the game. I also included John Rudolph Niernsey, the architect responsible for designing South Carolina's new State House, which players see under construction in 1864. Niernsey also transformed his own Columbia residence by extensively remodeling what had originally been the old Granby Courthouse after it was moved into the city in the early 19th century. I recreated this fascinating house in detail, and it serves as one of the important locations players will encounter during the game. No one can say with certainty exactly what many parts of Columbia looked like in 1864. Every reconstruction represents the best evidence currently available. I also studied the sack and destruction of Columbia, but although it provides invaluable information about property ownership after the fire of 1865, it rarely identifies the merchants and businesses that occupied those buildings before they were destroyed. Fortunately, archaeology helped answer many questions. One especially important project involved the blocks surrounding St. Peter's Church at Taylor and Assembly Streets. Years of archaeological investigations there allowed many details in the game to be based directly on excavated evidence. Among the discoveries were artifacts from the long-forgotten Congaree Iron Works, where bronze Confederate cannons were produced just across the street from today's St. Peter's School. In that same area, we also uncovered evidence from Columbia's oldest continuously operating hotel, which was destroyed by fire in 1895. Those discoveries became another important piece of reconstructing 19th century Columbia. Perhaps the most significant archaeological contribution came from investigations that helped identify the precise locations of the old State House and nearby Reeves Tavern, a landmark shown in a remarkable drawing from 1794. At the time, because of these discoveries, South Carolina's state archaeologist and I were beginning to plan a full archaeological excavation of the old State House site. Unfortunately, those plans were abandoned during the social and political turmoil of 2020 surrounding the removal of historic monuments and the reassessment of historical figures such as John C. Calhoun. That abandoned excavation became one of my greatest motivations for creating this game, because hidden beneath the old State House may still lie one of America's greatest lost works of art, the Roman marble statue of John C. Calhoun. The Calhoun statue's story is almost unbelievable. Commissioned in Rome from the celebrated American sculptor Hiram Powers, the work was created with input from John C. Calhoun himself. While being transported from Italy to America, the statue was lost at sea in the famous shipwreck that claimed the life of Margaret Fuller, often considered the world's first female foreign correspondent. That tragedy later inspired Elizabeth Barrett Browning's epic poem, Aurora Leigh. Remarkably, the statue was recovered from the wreck, eventually installed in Charleston City Hall, and then secretly hidden in Columbia during the Civil War. The statue held enormous symbolic importance. Its image even appeared on South Carolina's secession banner of 1861. Yet today, no one knows exactly where it is. The site where it may have been concealed, the basement of the old State House, has never been archaeologically excavated. If that statue were discovered today, it would almost certainly rank among the greatest art discoveries of the century and one of the most important Civil War archaeological discoveries ever made. That mystery became the heart of my new game, called Guardians of the Marble Man. Players explore a historically reconstructed Columbia of October 5, 1864, searching for clues that may reveal where the statue was hidden before the city burned. In addition to following the clues, another goal of the game is to unlock all 25 achievements and locate a randomly selected set of 50 historical targets. The original 1872 bird's eye view of Columbia identified 45 numbered landmarks, including state institutions, public buildings, churches, manufacturing establishments, hotels, schools, parks, and public halls. During the development of the game, extensive historical research expanded that list from 45 landmarks to more than 300. Every time you begin a new game, a different set of 50 targets is randomly chosen from those 300 locations. Using the 1872 bird's eye map together with directional clues provided in your target list, you must navigate the fully reconstructed 3D city of Columbia and locate each objective as efficiently as possible. This unique style of gameplay is what I call a 3D historical orienteering simulator. Players who are skilled at interpreting a two-dimensional map and translating it into real-world navigation will have a distinct advantage. A knowledge of Columbia's history can also provide valuable insights that make finding many of the targets even easier. Everything in Guardians of the Marble Man is grounded in real history, but I also chose to include a couple of well-known local legends. One of the oldest is the story of Civil War-era tunnels beneath Columbia. For more than a century, people have claimed that a network of underground passages connected the old State House to other parts of the city, allowing legislators and government officials to escape if Columbia came under attack. The legend gained credibility because, over the years, several city streets unexpectedly collapsed beneath the weight of heavy trucks. Beneath those cave-ins were 19th century brick structures that many people assumed were the remains of the famous tunnels. While researching the project, however, I discovered a different explanation. Every one of those collapsed sites corresponded with locations where historic maps, including Drie's 1872 bird's eye view of Columbia, show small creeks flowing beneath what later became city streets. The brick structures were not secret passageways at all, but large brick culverts built to carry streams beneath the growing city. The game also touches on another Columbia legend, the University of South Carolina's mysterious Third Eye Man. Unlike the historical events portrayed throughout most of the game, there is no hard evidence that the Third Eye Man ever existed. It remains one of Columbia's best-known urban legends, passed down through generations of students and storytellers. These legends add a sense of mystery and adventure, but they should be distinguished from the historical evidence that forms the foundation of the game. Some buildings are exact recreations based on historical evidence. Others represent informed reconstructions where no visual record survives. Every street, every landmark, and every archaeological clue reflects years of research. Ultimately, this game is about much more than entertainment. It is my attempt to preserve discoveries that might otherwise be forgotten, to demonstrate how archaeology, historical documents, engineering, and modern technology can work together. And perhaps most importantly, to inspire someone someday to undertake the archaeological excavation that was never completed. Because the Marble Man may still be waiting beneath Columbia, and history's greatest discoveries are often found where no one is looking.